Today, a story came out about clear cooperation policy in Inman by Carl Medford. And this has been a hot topic for me personally for a very long time, pretty much since it came out. I knew this was a bad idea. I knew it was a bad idea because as a smaller brokerage, when I saw the exception in the policy for brokerages that had one broker for like an entire region or a whole state, I knew that the exception that says you can market off-market properties in-house was going to cause a problem, and indeed it did. So I took to the streets. I joined my association. I went to Inman, and by and large, I got hit with cease and desist. I got hit with all kinds of different pushback on this policy, which everyone knows was not good. And I had so much support from the agent community, especially after I did the Inman a couple of years ago. I think it was 2021. People were just outraged, as I was, about what was going down. Well, now, here we are, post NAR settlement. I feel like clear cooperation got us into this. And now here we are at this moment where big brokerages such as Compass, Robert Reffkin, and Mauricio Umansky from the agency have spoken out against clear cooperation. I'm like, great, you should speak out against clear cooperation, although I'm surprised that Compass would speak out against it, given that they've been the biggest beneficiary of the policy, creating essentially an in-house MLS that is off only for their agents. So, whoever sells in an off-market way through Compass, these are listings that would not be exposed to the general public, for better or worse, right? So generally in real estate, the idea is the more access, the better, which is why clear cooperation was created, right? It was created to make certain that agents were putting listings in the MLS. So the problem is it was a poorly concocted policy. And prior to clear cooperation being a policy, honestly, rarely did this ever even come up in my markets that I sold in. Rarely did I see anybody causing a stir about off markets. No brokerages had their own in-house off-market MLS. Nobody was using off markets as a listing marketing strategy. You just didn't hear about it at all. So clear cooperation policy in and of itself kind of created a crisis, and now we have to deal with it. So in this Medford article, he talks to an agent who hangs her license with a large national brokerage about the perceived advantages her broker offered, and she stated, we get access to off-market listings. So this is also being used as a recruitment tool for the bigger brokerages, right? This gives us an opportunity to approach those sellers to see if they would entertain a preemptive offer. Again, this is exactly what the rule was created to prevent from happening, and now it's definitely happening. My perspective was that the problem with clear cooperation is this exception that it makes for bigger brokerages. So it just handicapped the boutique brokerages and then gave a pass to the bigger brokerages. Now, I don't think anyone intended when they wrote this for one broker to be taking care of an entire state. And in fact, I think that's something that the DRE needs to investigate, because there's absolutely no way that one person, one broker of record, could do their job of monitoring and managing thousands and thousands of agents for an entire state. In fact, I think part of the solution to this could just be eliminating that exception, so that if you're at, the office, the Beverly Hills office of XYZ brokerage, that's the office that gets to market in-house, so that it by nature just contains your off-market listings to a particular amount of people. And that, for me, would make it at least a little bit more fair. But as it is right now, and the way companies have gotten around it, is by having one broker for the entire state, so that all of the offices in the entire state have access to this off-market MLS, essentially, that they're doing in-house. Okay. So here's what Medford says. He says there was a clear cooperation opportunity report from T360, and he quotes it. NAR implemented the CCP in November 2019, effective May 1, 2020, in response to concerns that off-market listings were disadvantaging buyers and sellers. The policy has since faced legal challenges and criticism while drawing attention from federal regulators who, after overseeing the removal of compensation from the MLS, now appear to question requiring submission of publicly marked listings to the MLS. The MLS provides sellers with broader exposure to potential buyers through other agents, though commissions from double-sided in-house transactions are typically lower than those involving separate listing and selling agents. Additionally, the MLS displays price drops and days on market, which is something I want to talk about, which gives buyers valuable insight that helps them identify slower-moving listings and make competitive offers. Critics argue that this transparency can hurt sellers by highlighting the property's time on market. I haven't heard that one. I have never heard that time on market as being a reason why people don't like clear cooperation policy. And in fact, to the point of data, because it's agents who enter the information into the MLS, it's agents who control how the time on market data looks. So, for example, with our MLS, the day count stops for days on market only when the agent changes the status from active to pending. Now, pending used to mean all contingencies are removed. This thing is likely going to close. But for some reason, even though there's an accepted contract on the property, the MLS refuses to stop the day count when there's an accepted offer. Because they say if you're continuing to market for backup, that you're still active on the market. This makes absolutely no sense. Marketing for backup, ask any agent who's ever marketed for backup. Marketing for backup is an exercise in futility. Most buyers do not want to look at houses that already have an accepted offer. They don't want to submit offers on houses that have an accepted offer. But our sellers, of course, still want us to continue to market for backup, just in the odd case that maybe there is a buyer who submits. And you know what? Sometimes it does happen. But to actually count your days while you're in contract as being active just because all contingencies haven't removed and it's in bad faith to switch it to pending causes great data confusion in the MLS. The data isn't right. The days on market is not correct. It's not correct. So the fact that this is even being brought into this conversation for me is very confusing. Maybe some other MLSs have got it right, but my MLS, I have spoken with them about this. I've sent them emails about this. I've talked about this. They don't care. They do not care that agents are entering the information different ways. They don't care that the data is not correct. They just don't care. I don't know why they don't care. They should care, but they don't care. Okay, so this Medford says, opportunity one, keeping it. The CCP garners support from small and some large brokers for promoting fair housing. Again, this was another thing that they talked about when they launched this thing, that somehow there were agents out there who were selectively, potentially discriminating. I don't even know if there was evidence of this. It feels like it was made up concern, kind of like love letters, like, you know, that they're potentially discriminatory. When I'm like, if a seller wants to discriminate, the seller can Google the name of the person who wrote the offer. I mean, there are many, many ways if the seller wants to do that. But you know, the language of most sellers and the language of most agents in this day and age is green. They just want the money. So the idea that there would be a fair housing component to off-market listings, to me, is ridiculous. But again, here it goes. And limiting brokers from serving both buyers and sellers in the same transaction. How? How does an off-market listing limit brokers from serving both buyers and sellers? And it does the exact opposite. If a brokerage has their own in-house MLS and is only marketing to that brokerage's agents, that is by its own nature going to be dual agency. And in states that allow dual agency, you know, that's the advantage. You know, who wins in this? I've talked about it before on my Instagram. The brokerage wins. The buyers and sellers, we don't know if they win. Maybe buyers pay too much. Maybe sellers don't get enough. I don't know. You know, we don't know because the data is not there. We don't have accurate data, and then we don't have pictures. We're just getting, you know, one exterior photo, which is another horrible trend in our industry right now. So you can't even comp. You can't use it as a comp because you can't see the condition of the interior. Mess. It's a mess. It curtails larger brokerages dominating both sides of a transaction by preventing them from withholding properties from the MLS. Okay. So I see. Okay, so it's saying keeping the clear cooperation policy would curtail larger brokers from dominating both sides of a transaction by preventing them from withholding properties from the MLS. But we have clear cooperation policy right now, and that's absolutely not what's happening because of the exception. The exception is the problem. The exception is a problem. So even this opportunity one, keeping CCP, doesn't make sense and is not realistic because under the current rules, with that exception, large brokerages are using this to their advantage, double ending and making sure that the general public at large does not have access. Smaller firms don't have access to the listings. If the policy is rescinded, smaller firms could be disadvantaged due to reduced access to listings. If the policy is rescinded, then smaller firms can also make the claim that they can market and off market to the general public, right? So why do people choose to do off market listings in the first place anyway? Like, what would a seller's reasoning be? Well, in my world, sometimes it's like a neighbor saying like, hey, if you know anybody who's looking, I don't really want to go through the rigmarole of going live. I don't want to have open houses, whatever. But if you have a buyer who'd be willing to pay 1.8 million for my house, like, please bring me that offer, So there's that. And then there's also like, sometimes sellers have very expensive artwork or they're celebrities. They don't want to go live. They don't want their pictures of their house on the MLS. There is a feature in our MLS where there's like private listings. Nobody uses it. So maybe they just want a more private thing. They're like, Courtney, you know a lot of music industry people. Our house has a recording studio. If you know someone who's interested, please shop it around to the agents that you know. I don't feel like going live on market again. We have lots of expensive stuff in here. I don't want my pictures online, but we're willing to sell. So then there's that. And then there's also the possibility that maybe it's the holidays. Maybe the seller's doing some work to the property, but it would be to their advantage. And remember, my fiduciary is to my seller. So if they perceive that there would be an advantage to me shopping it during Christmas without counting days on market and wasting days during the holidays, that is totally legal. It is legal. So why shouldn't I be able to do that? So to me, if they rescind the policy, it at least gives smaller brokerages the chance to compete so that bigger brokerages can't pretend like their off-market MLS is the only off-market option, right? So I disagree with all of this. Aggregators and paper brokerages, which have built consumer portals relying on MLS data to generate leads and referrals, defend the CCP as they benefit from comprehensive listing access. So I presume he's talking about Reffkin and Zillow. They absolutely benefit from all of our photos, from all of our expensive videos that we make. They created a search portal that our MLSs could have done. NAR could have done this. But instead, we now basically our MLS licenses our images to these brokerages. The agent doesn't get any advantage in that. I pay for the photos. Redfin uses them to market to another buyer, but I don't get any kickback from that. It's frustrating. But yeah, but they do, they feel like if people stop marketing that way, then they're going to lose properties to market. I can see how they would think that. But I do think most reasonable sellers are going to think putting the listing in the MLS is the best way to reach the majority of buyers. So that's what they're going to want to do. Common sense says it. And also there was a world before clear cooperation where that is what most sellers chose. So to me, this idea that all of a sudden people are just going to pull all their inventory is probably a little bit overstated. Okay, so it says this aspect highlights what I would refer to as the Walmart effect, an economic impact felt when larger. I'm just glad that they're even like talking about this right now because I've been talking about this since it came out. But he's saying that, when large retailers like Walmart come in and usually force smaller business out and reduce wages for employees overall. Well, I'm just saying, what about the recent acquisitions? Like, what happens if one brokerage dominates an entire market area? If they have 50% market share, and they don't have any reason to put their listing on the MLS as far as they see they want to try and sell it in-house first, then yeah, there's going to be a big problem. But this is a crisis that was preventable. And this is a problem that was created by the policy. It was created by the policy. And that's the part that they don't get. They don't get it. So then there's an opportunity too. Larger brokers argue that the CCP is anti-homeowner because it forces sellers to display negative insights such as days on market, which can put them at a disadvantage during negotiations. I thought this whole movement right now is about transparency. I personally, as a buyer's agent, of course I want to see the accurate data of days on market, because if a property's been on the market for a while at a certain price point, then maybe the market's saying this is not the right price for this house. It doesn't mean the seller's going to accept an offer that's much lower, right? So the seller always has the right to accept or reject any offer, but at least it gives us a little bit of a sense of maybe that was overpriced, so that when we go to sell a house in that same neighborhood, we can see, okay, so maybe we're going to price it a little bit lower because that higher price didn't generate offers for 60 days or whatever. Transparency is critical. I agree with him on that. But he says, while brokerage may argue that days on market can be negative, it's data a potential buyer needs. I've never heard even one person say the reason for removing clear cooperation had anything to do with it being anti-homeowner. I really honestly think that is a made-up argument that is not true. Oh my God. Okay, so the industry is split. Yeah, I can see that the industry is split, but I think that we actually need to deal with the reality of things right now. NAR created a policy that was poorly thought out. It had unintended consequences, some of which include it created a gigantic exception for big brokerages to essentially create an in-house MLS. And now it's sitting here right in front of us. Is the consumer winning in that scenario? I don't think so. But if you have big brokerages considering potentially leaving on the National Association of Realtors so they don't have to abide by these ridiculous policies, then you have a problem. You have a problem. And this is what I said on the Inman stage a few years ago. This is going to potentially cause the downfall of the MLS. If that happened, okay, I think what would actually happen is Redfin and Zillow are going to charge agents to post their individual listings, and that's what we would do. Like if everybody decides, you know what, we don't want to deal with NAR's ridiculous policies. They don't listen to the people. They don't change their tune when there's something wrong. It's falling on deaf ears. It's a bureaucracy. It's like a mafia. It's like, come on, people. Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Like, I cannot tell you how many times I've gone to leadership with this stuff. You know what I get? The former president of my association making trolling comments on my comments on Instagram. It's like, that's what I get. That's what I get. So our industry's environment is not a freedom of speech environment. This is a bully squad, and they do not like anyone who tells them that the thing they sat around a table at and decided was the best policy for real estate agents is actually flawed and has created this unintended consequence, handicapping smaller brokerages and giving big brokerages so much leverage that they might have just created the absolute downfall of our industry, both with the separation of buyer and seller commissions now, the NAR issues. That's all related to mandatory entry as well. I mean, let's not forget about the big white elephant in the room, right? The mandatory entry is the problem that created the lawsuits. It's not against the law to have a pocket listing. It's not against the law. Why would our very own leadership be like handicapping us in this way? It's like, this has caused so many repercussions, and now we're at the potential brink of it causing yet another repercussion, which is if these big brokerages continue to acquire big brokerages, continue to acquire market share. It's like a monopoly. That's kind of what it's feeling like. Like if I don't join them, then somehow I'm not able to do my job as well. So what, I have to pay my 10% to this big brokerage when I'm an indie brokerage. The rules should apply across the board for everyone the same way. This has been the problem with this policy from the beginning, and now we're seeing its ugly, ugly implications. And once NAR loses control of those big brokerages, once they decide to step away from the association so they don't have to abide by these ridiculous policies, then you're going to really be in trouble. Then it's the prisoners have taken over the prison. There's absolutely no, aside from state law, there's going to be no, no reprimand, no control over the process. So this should be a wake-up call to NAR. This should be a wake-up call Like, hello, you have to listen to the people. And the people, by and large, do not like clear cooperation. If this has not been proven in the lawsuits, because that was about mandatory entry, right? Mandatory entry causes people to have to put a listing in the MLS. And if you put it in the MLS, you have to, at the time, you had to split your commission, right? So the sellers were pissed off that they had to pay a buyer's agent. You know, the argument there, I heard some people say, why do I have to pay my wife's divorce attorney or whatever? But they didn't realize that, in my opinion, paying a buy-side commission is really a marketing cost. And when you sign a listing agreement, you're only signing it with the listing agent. It was the listing agent's negotiated fee that they were sharing with the buy side. So it wasn't like you're paying buy side. Like, if you didn't have to enter it into the MLS, then that full amount of the commission would have been on the listing agent. You see, so the sharing of the commissions was a choice by the listing agent, but what made it mandatory was clear cooperation. And that's where the trouble started. Anyway, so this Medford, he says, human nature being what it is, I've learned that it's better to provide guardrails for human behavior so that the tendency to leave the road is diminished. In light of the recent attempts to remove clear cooperation, maybe instead of guardrails, we need an electrified fence. What? Listen, if the sellers don't want to market their property to the public, and it is not against the law to market their property off market, our association should not stand in the way of the agent serving the seller in the method the seller wants to be served with regard to marketing their home. Period. And because of this poorly constructed policy, we now have a situation where there are gigantic brokerages trying to potentially acquire enough other brokerages that they want to have a market share that will no longer require the MLS. That could be, I don't know if it is, I'm just saying it could be a consequence of sticking with this lopsided policy. I just had to bring it up because also yesterday I think the EXP guy made some comments about clear cooperation, and it's like it's missing they all miss the mark. Clear cooperation as a policy is flawed. It is flawed. But if you want to just start with one thing to fix it, one thing. It would be make it apply to all brokerages equally, as in, if a brokerage has an office, that would be the limitation of where you can market that office exclusive, just in your office, not in the whole entire state for some people and in a 20-person office for someone else. It's just not fair. And if a seller decides that he wants to market or she wants to market a property off market, let the agent fulfill that need no matter which brokerage you work for. Period. It's a simple way to make this at least a little bit more balanced. But overall, I think it needs to go. That's my 2 cents. Peace out.